Hey everyone, I've got a special treat and a different type of conversation that we're going to have. And if you like it, I think we're going to do more of these because this really gets to the heart of process innovation. I am I think as an issue of mine maybe that I'm always looking at processes and seeing how or envisioning how they can be improved, whether it's a traffic light sequence, or if I'm waiting in the queue at the grocery store, another store, looking at how things are running and looking and seeing and trying to identify the friction points and figuring out if there's a better way. We're just always looking at how to improve things. And I know Randy's the same way. So this session is really focused on experiences, process experiences, whether good or bad, and deconstructing them to see how we can learn and improve them. So I hope you enjoy it. And without further delay, here it is. Take it away. This will be fun, I think.
Yeah. So many times when we're working with customers, bringing in our technology, our solutions, and changing physical processes or manual processes into electronic workflows, electronic solutions. Those first engagements, we discuss things like, well, Sally has always done this, so when these things come in, we need to assign it to Sally so she can take care of it. And then it goes to Jim, and he does the second part of whatever the business thing is. And so what we try to guide customers towards is thinking about things, business processes with more resiliency. So if Sally has a medical issue or a family emergency or something like that, and she's sitting on a stack of 10 transactions, well, those are going to sit there until she gets back. Or maybe she doesn't come back and somebody else has to sift through and kind of pick up where she left off. So we try to guide customers into thinking about work queues. So we've got a group of users, and maybe it's only two people, but at least we've got more eyes, more visibility into these transactions so they don't end up just sitting in somebody's electronic desk as opposed to on their physical desk, which really doesn't help very much. And so, addition to this, how do we surface that up into whomever's consuming this, or whoever on the outside of this transaction, the customer or the constituent? So, like Greg said, we were on our way down, a drive down to the office, and I was kind of ranting about this situation I'm in. I've got a roof claim going on with my insurance company, and I don't want to beat up on the insurance company. I want to use this as a learning opportunity for all of us, and kind of showing some of the pitfalls that we see, like I kind of just described. So I'm gonna share my screen here, and then I'm gonna pull up just a quick PowerPoint, just because I've got some visuals I want to show. So when we talk about customer experience and process management and how those things go together and best practices for that, I think we're all familiar with FedEx tracking. And I think it's pretty darn good. Now, every time you have a complicated transaction, there's always a possibility things could go terribly wrong. But I think for the most part, they've really got this customer experience nailed pretty well. So we've probably seen this before. If you get a FedEx, you can get a link and you track it, you open their tracking portal and you can see all this information. And what I like about this is it provides very, very detailed information, all correlated correctly, very understandable at a glance. I know where my package is, where it's been. These are not simple processes. These involve multiple people, multiple drivers across huge geographies, perhaps the entire world, lots of different systems involved. So it's not that they're presenting just some information about a very simple process here. These are very complicated, logistics and transportation issues. But the other thing they do is they provide guidance to me in terms of the predicted outcome. When is this going to be resolved? When is my package going to arrive? When is this transaction going to be finished? And that's super helpful for me. And as you look around this user interface, you'll see at least 3 different little help icons, so I can get contextual help. So help about travel history. What does that mean? Ship date. What does that mean? Up there at the very top right, I've got some general help. So when I have questions, there are places where I can go in the user experience to get quick help. Also, I've got the ability to request notifications. So proactively get notifications via email or SMS text when things occur in my business process. So this is an example, I think, of a really well thought out, well implemented customer experience and
Yeah.
process management solution.
Yeah, let me this spawned some thoughts of, I mean, well, I remember not the day and time like something, but the first time I encountered, I think it was FedEx that rolled this out the first, and UPS followed suit and everything like that.
Yep.
But it was so transformative. It represents kind of that type of problem that everybody had, but they didn't realize that they didn't know about the solution, right? The solution is to provide this, what we started calling this, I think, a couple of years ago, process transparency, and giving this level of visibility into a process that just it just helps. Like you said, you get these proactive notifications, you can set expectations, but it also draws a comparison or a contrast with USPS, which for all of their network, and they have a hard job to do, they kind of aped this experience, but they don't do it as well. I was just like, so you have all these details here that show where it is in the transit system. So many times where I'm receiving something through USPS, it just says making its way through the network or something, and it gets stuck there for like a week or two, and I'm thinking, is it lost? So it just in that case, it just sometimes it can cause more problems if you don't do it right.
And it kind of leaves you wondering, are they just not telling me something, or do they just not know?
Right.
Don't know which is worse, but
this is a great one though.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to talk about a bit of a negative experience. And again, I'm not trying to beat up on anybody, but I want to illustrate where we can get caught up in these paving the cow path, so to speak. So this is the way we've always done it. We're just going to create an electronic version of that, and I'll show you some of the pitfalls. So this is my insurance company's portal, and I've redacted things to protect the innocent or the guilty. You might be able to recognize who they are. But when I come into my claim, this is the status that I see. So right off the bat, I see three buckets that my claim can be in. Reported. Well, that's kind of useless because I reported it through the portal. So the fact that it actually appears here in my claims means that it's reported. So that's useless. And then in process and wrapping up, well, I'm not given any timelines. There's no timing information, so I have no temporal sense of how long that took or where it's going. And I don't even know what those mean. I mean, in process and wrapping up, where's that boundary? What is included in the steps for in process and what's included in wrapping up? And so there's no contextual help. I can't make heads or tails of this. So to be honest, this is almost useless here. So that's one example. Now, you may not want to surface every little step in the workflow. That's okay. Some stuff the customer constituent doesn't need to know.
Yeah.
But I think this errs on the side of uselessness here.
Right.
So one of the other things I can do is I can go into the payments for my claim here. And that's nice that they provide that. And they actually had date information and who the check went to and the status of that. But what's confusing here is if you do some quick math on the amounts of the checks that have been issued and compare that to the total paid to date, they don't match up. So I don't know what that means. But in my mind, what that means is something might be messed up. Their totals don't match. I mean, it's like, imagine if you go to your bank account and you see your transactions and the math isn't correct. I mean, that's kind of unsettling. So that's pretty bad. I think they should either provide some help on this and why, or maybe there's a payment that is pending. I actually don't even know because I can't get information from this company. But and then lastly, I can go into this messages. So this claim started actually back in early October with some direct emails to the adjuster. Those were going nowhere. It would go 2 weeks with no response at all, and then a cryptic response. And so finally, I came into the portal, and I thought, well, maybe if I interact through the portal, I'll get some better traction. So it turned out not to be the case. And actually, you'll see here their site's having some issues. I've tried to grab a different screenshot over the last few days, different machines, but something's broken, which happens. But it usually looks a little prettier than this. But these are the messages that I've exchanged with this company and my adjuster through this process. And off the bat, you'll notice that the messages aren't even in correct chronological order. So that's kind of weird and help. And, it keeps me from really putting together in my mind what happened in a chronological order easily.
Right.
And then they have these in the screen before this, they have up in the top right, you see, I just snipped that little part of the screen. It says, how's your property claim progressing? Going well or not going well? And I thought, well, it's not going well. I can't get response from my adjuster. So I'm going to say it's not going well. And I put in some very thoughtful feedback about, hey, here's the situation. I'd really appreciate that. And apparently that went into the exact same black hole that all of my messages to my adjuster went in, because I filed 3 of the it's not going well, and they went nowhere. I got no information. And only after getting my broker involved, multiple phone calls, finding out who the manager was, multiple emails and phone calls, do we actually get some traction. But this is still going on. And each interaction takes about a week to get information back from this company. So overall, it's been a terrible experience. I would never recommend this company in terms of once you get into a claim situation. But these are examples of things you just don't want to do when you're trying to create a good, customer experience. And I don't know if there's even any workflow behind this. They may take care of everything via email, but we could help them with that. And we certainly would not recommend, making this a single point of failure with a single adjuster and not having automated notifications when I get a not going well from my customer. I don't want that. I want to be able to handle that. So that needs to be escalated, up to the adjuster's manager, which we ended up doing manually. But those are things that you need to take care of on the back end with proper workflow. So just to sum up real quick, what we believe in our best practices for a quality customer experience and process management, combination of those 2 capabilities. Excuse me. You need to provide meaningful status back out to your customers, not just it's in process and then sometimes in the future it's going to be done. Something more meaningful, so that we get a sense as a customer that things are actually moving through the process. And allow me to sign up for proactive notifications. I want to be notified if something changes, not have to ask.
That's a big deal, right? Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
First was the ability to be able to tap in and see what's going on, but then the ability to just not have to do that and just be notified through text. Keep it optional, right? But make it the option that they can do that and stay informed. That's a big one.
And there's all kinds of stuff I'm sure that goes on in the back end, and they work with other line of business systems and all that kind of stuff. I get that, but to just put this customer correspondence, this relationship into a simple basic workflow is not that hard. We do it every day with customers. And so these are not insurmountable, things or pie in the sky type of capabilities. Contextual help, just help me understand. Let me do my own research, provide information to me. Yeah. You've got decades of experience helping customers through this process. Just let me in a little bit. I don't know what your acronyms are, your verbiage that you use a lot of times. You're the expert. Just share with me what's going on and try to help me a little bit. And make sure the information that you're exposing is accurate. If you're putting things that are happening in the transaction and they're not even in chronological order, that erodes my trust that you know what you're doing, or that this process is going to end well or soon for me.
Or when the math doesn't add up.
Yeah, the math doesn't add up. I mean, that's crazy. And that's fine. Maybe I'm sure there's something else going on, but tell me, right? Don't just,
right.
Yeah. And then make sure you have ensured through your process either human or automated responsiveness. So if you assign it to a single person, make sure that you've got some type of automated threshold that fires after 48 hours or whatever your time frame is. Either inform the customer, remind the person who's handling the transaction, or escalate this to management somewhere. You've got to do something. You can't just let it sit. It was weeks and weeks of me emailing through their portal, nothing. So that was just terrible. And then if you get negative feedback, especially if you provide a little, it's not going well, and that goes into the same black hole that the rest of the correspondence is going into, that is just more harmful than good. So just take it off of your portal or whatever. Don't provide that, because that's more frustrating than just not being able to get a hold of the person who's handling your transaction. So that's my rant today. I hope there was some positive information, and certainly we can help with these. We do that on the daily. And these are not, it's not rocket science to create a really good customer experience that's helpful and instills confidence and just creates a stickiness for your customers.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that all these are actionable. That last one is super important. I mean, the last two, I think, where you're setting expectations that their communications, and I think most of us expect, something to be responsive within 24 hours. You submit a support ticket or inquiry that just doesn't get answered at all, which has happened to me, and it still bugs in the back of my mind, even though I'm still waiting for a response back a month and a half later. It makes me, you affect the confidence in the organization. And I think I recall some research saying that, a bad experience takes 7 positive touches to kind of overcome. I think I'm a little more forgiving if they would finally respond and make it up. I think that would be fine. But yeah, for most people, that you're just setting yourselves up for failure, and so those two, I think, really, stick. And there's the recency bias piece too, right? So we all tend to remember the last bit or last experience, whether good or bad, and that affects the whole of the transaction. So companies still have a lot to learn. McKinsey, I think I shared a McKinsey report that I came across where everybody was focusing on digital experiences, right? And I think they still are, but now they realize that it's more than, I think this is the name of I called it more than a pretty web page. This is a sudden realization that just because you have a portal or just because you have a well-designed website, I think that the one you showed it was nice and it was clean, but if there's nothing backing it up of any substance, you're just doing more harm than actually. You should just go back to a call center and force people to call. Right.
Right. Yeah, honestly, that would have been better, as long as they could give you some real status about where your claim is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, one last thing too. When we roll solutions out to customers, we try to make that a big deal, and part of that is adoption, right? If you create a great solution, you try to roll that in, and you don't get adoption, well, it doesn't matter how good of a solution you provided. And I'm just thinking from a culture perspective. I worked for a really great small company 20 years ago, and we went through, our CEO kind of had maybe he had a bad experience with an insurance company. I don't really remember what the impetus was, but they went through one night, and this was back when we had desk phones, and they put this little 24, a sticker that said 24 on every phone in our entire office. And we all came in the next morning. We're like, who put this 24 sticker on? What does this mean? And then we had an all hands meeting that morning, and they explained that as a company, we want to create a culture of responsiveness. And whether that's internal or external, our goal is we're going to respond in 24 hours. Now, we don't have to have the answers, but at least responding to that question and saying, hey, I received this, I'm working on it. It's going to take some time, but that 24-hour window, if you can reach out and provide that response back, it just changes that person's experience, internal or external. So I just thought that was, there's a culture, there's a technology side to this, and there's a culture side to this as well. But
that's such a good point. I'm reminded, I had a similar situation where it was internal, and it was a lesson from a former boss that was basically saying, just don't go dark, and also don't undervalue the status being we're still working on it. So even if it's an update that says, hey, we know you're waiting, we're still working on it. That's valuable information, not something that just says, like you put, it's in progress or something with no update, no new date, nothing to even indicate that someone's actively working on it or they haven't forgotten. So these are all really good lessons. And so there's a lot to learn here. So yeah, thanks. if anybody watching this has some processes or experiences, both good and bad, that they'd like to share, we're interested in listening, because there's, as hopefully you've learned here, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot we can do to improve by just looking at things good and bad.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks, Randy.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everybody.